We are here at Slow Brew with Brother Ali. Ali, thanks again so much, man, for taking time to be with us today. And I'm really excited to talk to you about tonight's show and the tour that you're on with Immortal Technique. And you guys both bring so much to the game, and we're really excited to have you here on the Central Coast. But before we get into that, I actually wanted to talk to you a little bit about your history and kind of what inspired you to get into hip-hop. You obviously are known for being a very politically conscious artist, and I've read in other interviews where you've talked about the influence of late 80s hip-hop, Chuck D, Rakim, Boogie Down Productions, things like that. Could you tell us a little bit about kind of what back in the day, what little Ali was listening to back in the 80s?
Well, hip-hop wasn't what made me interested in politics. Oppression and injustice is what made me interested in politics, and really just the power of people. You know, politics is really just a term that, you know, refers to like how power is assigned. And so I'm interested in the power that people have within them, and, you know, the highly, you know, technological ways that people have been oppressed. You know, the response to that is for people to be reconnected with the power that they innately have. So we're talking about people of color, we're talking about women, we're talking about poor and working people, you know, and GLBTQ community, anybody, you know, people who aren't, in America we have a situation where some people are given papers and called a citizen, other people are not. And then even people that don't have those papers, there's a class system within them, within that group. So when people come from, you know, Scandinavia or something like that, that's not so much of a problem. But, you know, so it really was injustice that made me interested in that. It was being part of a community that created hip-hop that made me involved in hip-hop. So it wasn't that the music brought me to those things, it was that those things existed and this music came along and really embodied all of that. Gotcha. That the struggle of people, you know, all of the music that's been created by black and brown people in America, which is all of American music, that matters, basically has had a multi-layer meaning. And one of those has always been to affirm the humanity of the people that make the art. So, you know, there's this dominant narrative that, you know, black people are one-dimensional human beings, that they don't have deep, profound souls. And so the blues music comes along and makes the listener have to wrestle with the fact that this is a really deep, complex well of a human being, and that's not the dominant narrative. You know, people say that you know, black people aren't intelligent, and then jazz comes along, or that the idea that, you know, oppressed people can't work together, but jazz is that. And then, so hip-hop was really just the rebirth of all of those things. All those things, one at a time, were stolen by colonizers. You know what I mean?
Kind of like when Chuck D talks about Elvis, you know, or whatever, but just the co-opting of certain genres and styles of music, historically.
Every style of music. Every style of music. There's, you know, and that's the colonial mindset. You know, and people like us that are born in the same pigmental picture as the people who started that, we have to think very deeply in a really conscious way about the way that we interact with culture, with the reality that, you know, to stop being Irish or Italian and become white, you know, really was to buy into this myth that disconnected people with their humanity. And so you see that in Europe, there was art, there was culture, there was music when people were, you know, Swedish and Spanish. But then when we got here and became white, we produced nothing. All we have is watered down versions of things that other people create.
Kind of that narrative, you know, that kind of disaffirms people's past. I mean, even folks like, you know, House of Pain, you know, and like people that, like even Caucasian hip hop artists back in the day who were really trying to get a sense of culture and their roots and feeling maybe a disconnect with our Irish or Italian ancestry or whatever.
Well, yeah, you know, so the situation with Africans who were stolen and you know, you don't want to define a human being as a slave, but people who were captives, you know, in this part of the world, that's a unique story, and that particular thing has never happened before. And so, for that group of people to create art and to create expressions that really affirm their humanity in that setting. Everybody else that comes along and wants to do the same thing or feels a need to do the same thing, that's the first place that they go. So you'll see even the GLBTQ community, a lot of their expressions and the language that they use about they borrow it from the civil rights movement. A lot of the things that's done. With anybody trying to reconnect with and really stand up for themselves. As same thing with Arab Americans, the same thing, in Palestine and all over the world. That music and that spirit of I'm a human being and that matters.
One of the things, Ali, that I was looking forward to most today in talking to you, because we've interviewed some other folks. I've met Chuck D, interviewed Dead Prez, really got to meet some of the greats in hip hop, and especially folks that are really give such a great kind of narrative or explanation as to some of the contemporary things that are going on. There's so much going on in our world today, and I know you've been very astute at calling out hypocrisy and pointing out the humanity of people. And I kind of want to get your take on, what are some of the things, the contemporary issues, if you were to go in the studio next week and lay down 10 tracks, are there anything is going on right now in contemporary world or American culture that you might comment on? I mean, I'm thinking things like the NSA, the Snowden affair, the domestic spying. I know you've in the past had some issues with some, I think, cell phone companies. I think I read somewhere that just the, corporate America and how corporate America can be complicit in some ways in spying on Americans and things like that. I don't know. Does any of that resonate with you as issues of concern as an activist?
Absolutely, as a human being, as a truth teller, as a person that feels a sense of loyalty to the truth, and I have thought leaders, just like I have musical leaders. The people that you mentioned, I look to them now, not only when I was younger, but now still, and I still feel like that their insights into the world still shape mine in huge ways. Another person like that is Dr. Cornel West, who says that the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. That's how you judge the value of your truth. That's when when you're starting to tell truth that actually disrupts injustice. When you're telling truth that starts to chip away at the veneer, and start to let the ugly underbottom show. And so, yeah, I have had some experience with that. It's nothing compared to what my heroes have gone through. Nothing compared to what the people that gave their freedom and still giving their freedom. I mean, Mumia is still giving his freedom. Asada is still, to a certain degree, their physical freedom. Mentally and spiritually, they're freer than any of us are. And so we aspire to be like them and to tell that kind of truth that puts $2 million on your head. That's how you're really telling the truth.
When you're in the FBI's most wanted or whatnot, that you've...
Number one. Number one.
Public enemy number one, really. Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. I had interference from the Department of Homeland Security, and that's
in terms of like a visit to your door, asking you what's up, or
money out of my bank account. In terms of freezing a wire transfer when I was in Australia.
Claiming that you were contributing to a terrorist organization. I know that there's legal precedents to allow banks to freeze money under those circumstances.
They didn't claim anything. What they told me is that the words brother and Ali are both red flag words, so that just came up randomly, which is a lie, obviously. But this is right after my Uncle Sam goddamn video hit 2 million views. Yeah. And so that's when YouTube was just becoming the replacement for MTV that it obviously is now. But so that happened right around that time. And in order for me to get my money back, this was 5-6 years ago. I wish I would have known then what I know now, because I complied. I laid down way too quick when that happened. But so I had to give them information and basically give them verbal confirmation that they were tracking me, and in order for them to release my funds. So in my mind, I was thinking about the fact at that time that I got all these men out here with me that have wives and kids, and this money that they're holding is these men's salary, along with my own. And also
their livelihood to send back home or whatever.
And it was tied in with a independent record label, so Atmosphere's money was at risk. The founder of all of these people are staff back in the office. But had I known then what I know now, would have went differently, you know. But yeah, and then not long after that, Verizon Wireless kicked me off of a tour that I was supposed to do, sponsored by them. But you know, so you know, and there's a long history of how corporations and government have worked together to marginalize voices like Noam Chomsky, the way that they're trying to do with Dr. Cornel West. Cornel West is such a rock star, along with being an amazing truth teller, that they can never push him all the way out, you know.
I mean, we talked to Dead Prez when they were here a little bit about COINTELPRO. I mean, stuff way back in the day. People think this is all new. The TSA, no-fly list, domestic spying or monitoring or whatever you want to call it. But you go back historically, you've got COINTELPRO. You've got people purposefully breaking the law, going in with the Panthers, undermining democratic organizations that are trying to organize. And so it's, you look at history and you see some patterns there. Right. And what are some of the patterns in today's society that most concern or alarm you right now in terms of maybe governmental U.S. foreign policy, things like that?
Well, I mean, I think they're the same things. You know, I mean, in some ways, they're just technical. The technology has grown, and also our society has been, and that technology has been used to put us to sleep more than ever. Americans are sleepwalking more than ever. And that's the thing about privilege. That's the what Tim Wise calls the pathology of privilege, is that privileged people, because the power structure is giving us a little bit of relative benefit over somebody else, it lulls us to sleep and makes us believe in the inherent goodness of power, because power is benefiting us to a little bit, you know. So we say, well, like, you only have 2 bedrooms, I got 4 bedrooms. You know what I mean? So I'm never going to look at the person that has I got
2 cents more than you, and therefore I'm somehow inherently better than you are.
Yeah. Exactly. And so it makes us comply with a power structure that makes sure that we still keep those 2 cents. And so, you know, so all of these things are the same. They're just, you know, now we have drones instead of carpet bombs. Now we have but the same principles are still at play.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Lee, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know fans are lined up outside, man, and I know you and Technique are getting ready to go on stage here in a little bit. But I did want to mention again, today is actually kind of a poignant day, and I imagine that you and/or Technique might make reference to it. But today is September 11th, 2013, and September 11th, 2001. Was a day that we all are well aware of, and particularly for those folks in the Islamic or Muslim American community, since then, having experienced a lot of discrimination, oppression, hate crimes, things like that, and being a person of the Islamic faith yourself, I'm wondering if you and/or your spiritual colleagues, you know, in your congregation or your community, if you witnessed a lot of that over the last decade or so.
Well, whiteness, you know, our society values whiteness overall. So the fact that I'm Muslim is less an impact on my life than the fact that I'm considered white. So, you know, no matter how much I grow my beard, no matter how much I, you know, have to wrestle with the, you know, Department of Homeland Security or something like that, the reality is that at any time I have the choice to stop saying these things and just be normal, and I'll be left alone. That's not the reality for people, you know, who are black and brown, yellow, red Muslims from all over the world, who this is their home. The thing about September 11th, I didn't think about it until you just said it, but I think that there are some symbolic things that say a lot about where we're at as a society and our relationship with other civilizations. So September 11, 2001, the West didn't know much about Islam prior to that. We're ignoring them. You know, 1 in 4 people, or maybe 5, 1 in 4, or 1 in 5 people in the world is a Muslim. So it's a civilization that, regardless of what we think about it, it's a great civilization that we need to understand and learn about. You know, and it's growing. It's the fastest growing religion on earth, both by birth and by
by conversion, so to speak.
Conversion, yeah. So, you know, so prior to 9/11, we didn't know much about Islam. We were ignoring Islam, and we were ignoring primarily the growth of Islam among African Americans. that Islam has been a huge factor in the African American community, and African Americans have laid the foundation for what we could call mainstream Islam in America.
Here in America. Gotcha.
The person that I followed was W.D. Muhammad, whose father was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who didn't start but organized and led the Nation of Islam for so many years. Reformed, people that would be considered criminals, people that would be called drug addicts, reformed them, stood them up, made them, extremely productive, allowed them to live, more of their human potential. When he died, his son became the leader of the movement and brought about a very uniquely American and uniquely African American view of Islam. And he was the leader of the largest group of indigenous Muslims, the largest group of Muslims, period, in America, from 1975, and he died in 2008. He died in early September. He was buried on September 11th, 2008, 5 years ago today. During that 35 years that he was the leader of the largest group of American Muslims, he was on mainstream television maybe 4 times. And
just
most
really
people
disregarded.
don't know him. And he's right there under your nose. You can turn to him at any moment, but there's not a desire to do that. We've got other people. Hamza Yusuf is a really, white American scholar, one of the most respected scholars in America, and loves nothing more than to talk to Americans about Islam. For the most part, he's ignored. We've got all of these incredible leaders in the Muslim world, and they're not being engaged, which lets us know. And then there's people that are on TV, and we don't recognize most of them. Who is this person? You know what I mean?
They don't represent me or whatever.
When I go to the big conventions in Chicago and D.C., and these are not the people that I'm paying my money to see. Who is this person? Now, so that really shows me that the desire, that marriage between corporate and private corporate power and money and government power, and those corporations being the one that own most of the media, that there's not a desire to really help people understand Islam. Because there are huge business interests at play. Just like there's not a desire for us to respect the humanity of black and brown people, poor people, because they're feeding the new Jim Crow, they're feeding the new prison industrial complex, the biggest growing business in America, private prisons, private schools are the same way, those are terrible for black and brown kids, and not to even start talking about native, indigenous First Nation people. But so I think, this being September 11th, I think that's a really great picture, is that we didn't care at all until September 11th, 2001. And by September 11th, 2008, when this great Muslim leader, died, who was one of the, all of the majority of the respected, established teachers and thought leaders in Islam denounced the attacks. And if you read Jeremy Scahill's Dirty Wars, the beginning of that book, he starts by talking about the fact that all over the Arab world, people were saying, we are against this, and we would like to help you find these people, because these are the problem in our community as well. And now that's debatable too, because a lot of those are regimes that were put in place, and so you could look at the Al-Qaeda thing as a revolutionary human rights element. So you could argue whether they got off course or not, but they're fighting oppression and tyranny where they live, and when they trace it back, they trace it right back to us.
I was just gonna say, I remember after September 11th talking to some conservative people I knew and just saying, your history, check out your history books. Our taxpayer dollars, CIA funded Al-Qaeda. We fund a lot of, we've overthrown democratically elected governments. The Allende. In Chile and just Iran. You go on, and sometimes that stuff comes back to roost. Manuel Noriega was trained at the School of the Americas on our dime here in the States, and then he maybe bite the hand that fed him, or however you want to take that in terms of maybe not abiding by Uncle Sam. Suddenly we go into Panama and invade. But before that, we were all cool. So it's like it's foreign policy is so fickle.
For us to invade Panama is okay. But if Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait, we have to step in. And this whole idea of reacting, where maybe by the time that this is viewed, maybe there will be bombs dropped on Syria. It's looking like it might not happen. If it does, then we're, we're further along than we thought even.
Yeah.
But this idea of we're just reacting. This is what people in power do when they want to enforce their will. They craft a narrative to say we're just reacting to your bad deeds. Which, I mean, George Zimmerman said he was reacting. Exactly. The Ku Klux Klan thought they were reacting.
Eye for an eye. Everybody tries to justify their stuff as a reaction or somehow a installation of justice,
And if it really was an eye for an eye, I'm saying there, is there, you can debate, is there a potential for a government that does have some moral authority? Because, the way that Assad is treating the people there, and the kind of hijacking of the revolution there by other people who want, it would be nice if somebody had power and morals to be able to say, let's work this out with really the intention of working it out. So when they put that line out there, they're like, what should the world do? Well, I mean, what should the world have done during the Tuskegee experiment? Because that was chemical warfare. What should the world have done when the CIA was putting crack in black neighborhoods? Because that's chemical warfare. How should the world be reacting now to us having genetically modified food and we're not even allowed to know what we're buying?
Experimenting on our own populace, right?
I'm saying that to me is chemical warfare. So how should the world intervene when mass incarceration? How should the world intervene during slavery times or Jim Crow or now the new Jim Crow? So if it really was an eye for an eye, you can even argue, is eye for an eye right? But there's a very human thing about justice. Mercy is better. And that's what all the world's religions tell us, including Islam. If you read the whole Quran, don't just read the parts that Christopher Hitchens tell you to read. If you read the whole thing, you'll see that justice is allowed because justice is a human nature. Mercy and forgiveness is better. Patience is better. Giving is better. But justice is allowed. So, so if it really were a just kind of thing, you'd see it in the actions. You'd see, care for the people. You'd see, us trying, the U.S. government trying to, bring peace or trying to support the actual people, giving support to people to say, while you're fighting this, we're going to make sure you don't starve to death. While you're fighting this, we're going to send some doctors there. We don't care who's hurting who. We're just going to heal human beings. These are the things that Chavez and Fidel tried to do with us. We don't like your policies, but we're not mad at your people. So we want to send some doctors to Katrina. No, they're rejected. We want to send food to your poor. Rejected.
It's deep stuff. Well, Ali, I really appreciate your take on things. I really just appreciate your insight too. I learned a lot from our discussion today, and real kind of poignant, I guess, to be here with you and watch you in Technique tonight on September 11th and kind of just be reflective and look at the kind of healing and inspiring nature of hip-hop music.
What's so beautiful about this tour, man, is that we talk about the real issues that are going on, but also because it's music, there's a cathartic, celebratory lifting of spirits that happens. When I'm on stage, I'm doing a lot of my more upbeat songs. Usually I feel like in hip hop spaces, the reality of the people that created hip hop should be known. It shouldn't be hidden, especially, a lot of times I'm in circles where the artists and the audience are white. And so it's like, okay, if we're going to engage in this art form, at least we should have some care for the fact that our liberation is tied up with our freedom is tied up with everyone else's freedom. We're all in this together. We can't be human without everyone. If certain people aren't human, then we're not human, especially if we're connected to the power structure that does that. So usually I'm on in spaces where I have to be the only guy. I gotta be the bad guy. You know what I mean? On this tour, that's not the case. Everybody knows what we're here for. So I do a lot of more upbeat songs. I try to give some uplift, recharging the batteries of the people that already care. And then when Technique is on stage, especially in places where so much of the audience is brown, to see, everybody's got to see themselves on stage, tearing it up, and like seeing in faces what it means to people. Also, I perform before Technique. We're co-headlining, but Technique closes.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's a sign that I want to send. That if as privileged people, when we're attempting to be allies, because I'm saying we're socialized to not even know how to be a fucking ally. You know what I mean? We don't even know how to be an ally. When we get involved in this work, we got this white savior thing. We're very paternal with how we talk to people. We think that we have all the answers. And we don't realize that the people that are going through it are best equipped to solve it. The people that catch the most hell are in the best position to lead us all out of hell. And so for me, I want to always be in a supporting role. And never the like, look at me, you know what I mean? Not to mention the fact that I get on stage and I'm, you know, and technique is so mighty and, you know what I mean? That it's just,
I wouldn't say you're the Flavor Flav to technique, but I mean, just the energy, you get that energy going, and then people can step back and kind of absorb and maybe get a little more of the reflective or the deep kind of heaviness of what technique brings to the table.
Yeah, I have my take, you know what I mean? I have my take. I have my relationship with justice and injustice. And, you know, but Immortal Techniques' take on that, you know, in a lot of ways is more poignant. You know what I mean? And that's an important thing to just affirm that and to model it. You know what I mean? We can't just say that we're dealing with white privilege, and then that means whatever we do is cool. You know what I mean? That's not a get out of jail. That's not a get out of privilege free card to just pay lip service to it. You got to actually implement that, and not that I'm perfect at it. You know what I mean? I've said some things that have been that have been misread and taken out of context to mean something different. When I said, you know, when I said there's no me and no you, there's just us, and at one point I was talking about reporters asking me my race. I said, they asked me if I'm black or white. I'm neither. Race is a made up thing. I don't believe in it. If you listen to the whole rest of that verse is about white privilege. But that one line,
interpret it like colorblind, like exactly. We're all the same or whatever.
I'm saying it's same thing with the other song. You know, there's no me and no you, it's just us. Those phrases, and this is just my naivety to how much in denial people with privilege are, the dominant group, you know, is that those things are taken out of context to say the opposite of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that our liberation is tied in together. We can't be human without connecting with the missing pieces of our humanity are in other people, and that we need to be in a supporting role.
And I think that's always been kind of a challenge of hip-hop, is the media and people that oppose it quote things out of context. They'll quote one line or one word without looking at the big picture, without looking at the perspective taking on that track. Sometimes people are taking a certain perspective. It's not what they really believe, but they're trying to twist it or reflect it back at you or show the irony or the paradox of it. So as a hip-hop artist, I'm sure that's something you sadly are aware of. When people just take a snippet of something and then say, oh, this guy supports blah, blah, blah.
Right. Well, where it happens to me is that, you know, the determining factor in privilege, the number one feature and function of privilege is that it gives you the ability to ignore things that don't apply to you. And so, you know, when I come out and I give a message like that with my verse, and the dominant people in the dominant group, privileged group, are hearing that, they have the key element of that privilege is to not hear the rest of what I'm saying and just hear the element that might affirm what they already want to hear. So, you know, that's something that even on the left, I mean, honestly, especially on the left, I find more of a fight on the left because the people on the right at least are very honest about what they believe in. They're all for the power structure. They like it like that. They've bought in. They've sold out. You know what I mean? They're for it, and they're trying to keep it in place, period, point blank. They tell you this is what I am. On the left, we have a lot of fake liberals, you know, who are operating out of guilt, and guilt isn't necessary. We talk about privilege. We're not saying that makes us bad people, that you know, our ancestors created this situation for us. It just means that we don't want to be active members in it anymore. And we're trapped in it just like everybody else is. We're trapped in the cage of whiteness until we create a situation where we can just be a human being. But at this point, our humanity is in this white cage. And when we're able to destroy that cage, you know, then we can just be ourselves. You know what I mean? But, you know, up until that point, that's where we're at. And the number one, the determination of like anything, what I have privilege about, anything that I can ignore. And so many times that's what happens. And on the left, people that are operating out of a sense of guilt, and that means that their work is charity, that they're thinking, I'm going to give you your freedom. I'm going to give you your dignity. I'm going to give you your, no, you're not.
In a paternalistic style, as though you have a power and these people don't have the power, and you're going to give it to them like Prometheus gave fire or something to mortals or something.
Yeah. Where the reality is, whether the system recognizes your power or not, I realize that I'm incomplete until we all are complete. You know what I mean? Like Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So it has to really be, there has to be self-interest attached to the work, you know, for people who are in privileged vessels. And that goes for, you know, people that are middle class and up, men, white people, straight people, Christian, you know what I mean? All across the board. Anybody in a situation where society is unjustly favoring us. You know, and one of the things that we have to tell people all the time is that a lot of, especially white men, will push back on that and say, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I'm not rich. I don't, you know, my dad doesn't own a business. I'm not inheriting anything. The government's doing me wrong too. Isn't it really about class? Class is a very real issue, but that's like a person with cancer telling a person with AIDS, like, it's really about cancer. It's not about AIDS. You know what I'm saying? There's more than one social disease, and they all come from the same root. Class and race both come from the same, you know, classism and racism both come from the same root. And so it's very important for us to realize and just take ownership and have the agency to know how to operate in that and take responsibility. It's not guilt. And, you know, we have guilt because we have latent guilt, dormant guilt, because we're being benefited from a society. And in a hyper-competitive society, when other people have obstacles that we don't have, well, that's a benefit. Whether, you know what I mean, whether it means that we're winning or not, it's a benefit because it's if it wasn't so competitive, it wouldn't matter as much.
It's an advantage, a strategic advantage, I guess, right?
Yeah. And so the idea is to you know, to just really connect with that human thing again. Yeah.
Well, you know, I can't think of more poignant words. I mean, again, on September 11th, I really thank Brother Ali for being with us today. Encourage folks to check out his work, including a new EP that's available. Go to brotherali.com, check that out. Strongly encourage folks to check out his new work because he's got a lot of exciting things going on.